welcome. Or did you want me to do that? Go for it. Okay. Again, welcome to everyone who is joining us this morning. As mentioned in the chat, if you would be so kind as to detail your first and last name and the institution that you're associated with in the chat so that we can make sure that we're keeping accurate roles. Today, we're going to be talking about the data quality for secondary institutions. And then we'll go over some data that Jeff has for us, how you can access your reports, and due dates for anything that might be pending in the next month or so. Jeff, go ahead and start.
All right. And these are the Perkins 4 definitions for participants, concentrators, and completers. For you veterans, you've probably seen this slide several times. For the newcomers, this might be new to you. Participant is a secondary student who's earned one or more semester credits in any CTE program area, grades 9, 12, or reported in grade 12. Concentrator, a secondary student who's completed at least one half the credits, usually 1.5, in a single CTE program of study, including at least one of the foundation courses. Again, that's grades 9 through 12, but we report them as seniors. Completers are secondary students who have completed usually 3.0 credits in a single CT program of study, including at least one of the foundation courses, and that's grades 9 through 12 also. There have been some changes to the definitions in Perkins 5, and we'll be going over that a little bit later. These are the secondary indicators. 1S1 is language arts achievement, 1S2 math achievement, 2S1 technical skill attainment, 3S1 CTE program completion, 4S1 graduation rates, that's from prior year data. 5S1 is placement, that's also from prior year data. 6S1 is non-traditional participation, and 6S2 is non-traditional completion. This slide shows who is measured in these performance indicators. So participants are basically all CTE students. Rarely would you find a CTE student who doesn't have at least 0.5 credits. And that's all grades 9 through 12. Our non-traditional participation is the only indicator that uses this measure. Concentrators, we report them as seniors. They're a little bit smaller group. And the rest of the indicators, except for 6S2, which is non-traditional completion, uses this measure. Completers, blue should be down one line, and that's a little bit smaller group. This shows the breakdown of the available reports we have for you. So in each one of the indicators, we have state overall totals, then your district totals, school totals within your district or charter school, and then district totals by CTE pathways. And these can be found on the CTE Finance SharePoint site. We'll get to that in a minute. Continuous improvement. This shows who is responsible for ensuring that your LEA is involved in the continuous improvement process. It's a shared responsibility between state, region, and local recipients or the LEAs. Region, when we met in Phoenix a little while ago, they mentioned that regions were a little bit more important than in Perkins 4. State players, State Perkins Coordinator, Wendy, Higher Ed and USTC liaisons, that's Blair and Jared, and State Info Specialist, I guess that's me. Local team, your CT director, the director's staff, and then the local data folks. We'll get into the performance reports in just a second here. I just wanted to let you know that in 2018, that should say 18, not 19, Utah passed all 14 Perkins 4 performance indicators, the 8 secondary and then 6 post-secondary. Camille's going to tell you how to access your reports.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. Sorry, I'm trying to get my newscast mode going. Anyways, you are welcome to access your reports via the CTE Finance Group SharePoint site. We did experience some technical difficulties with that site over the last couple of weeks. So if you have attempted access and can no longer access that site, please send me an email and I'll make sure that we get an invite issued out to you. When you go into the CTE Finance Group, you're actually going to want to go to your FY19 folder, and it should be under the subfolder of Perkins and then subfolder Falples. If you are having problems accessing this information again, please email me and let me know. Also, information for today's presentation is also going to be in the CTE OneDrive folder under Director Training. If you need guidance on how to get to that folder, again, please email me and I'm more than happy to direct you. And I think we can continue with institution reports.
Yeah.
Perfect.
State reports. Okay, so these are the statewide reports results. This is language arts achievement. You can see we dropped a little from 2017, but we still met the target of 39.55. When you're looking at these reports, pay attention. They're color-coded to let you know what's going on. If a line is all red, it means that you missed the entire target for that year. Where you see yellow in the cells, that's where you've missed for that subgroup. So, for example, Native Americans didn't meet it in 2018, 17, or 16. And we had the same sort of patterns happening with Black, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, and then in the special populations, the disabled, economically disadvantaged, LAP, and migrant. Pay attention to that as you look at these reports longitudinally. This is where you can hone in on these achievement gaps to see how to address that you need to address some issues that might be causing these students not to meet the target. One S2, we did not meet that last year in 2017. We jumped almost, a little more than 10 percentage points in 2018 and did meet the target for math achievement. What's that?
Just barely.
Just barely.
Yeah.
Yay!
Did we?
Well.
Oh, by 10 points we beat it.
Oh, okay.
CTE Skill Attainment. These are the skill cert exams, and concentrators are that group which we are looking at for this report. We jumped from prior years. It's like 4 prior years at least, and exceeded it by almost 4 points, more than 4 points. 3S1, CT program completion. Concentrators are the group we measure. We met that as well by a couple points, and we've been increasing in that one for the last 3 years. 4S1, graduation rates. We dipped just slightly from 2017, but we did meet the target by a little over 3 percentage points. The graduation rate and completion are very similar. Differences, the graduation rate takes into account the dropout cohort in the denominator. Placement, this, like the graduation rate, is a year behind just because of timing on the data, and we increased on that a little bit from the last 3 or 4 years and did meet the target by 7 percentage points. Your your surveys are helping us keep this measure in good standing. Before, it was a lot more convenient when we were able to collect the Social Security number and match against them with DWS, but the surveys have been working out well the last few years. 6S1, non-traditional participation. These are the underrepresented gender in any career field. And these are participants, so it's going to be 9th through 12th graders. We jumped a little bit from the last 3-4 years, and we exceeded that target by a little more than 8 percentage points. Non-traditional completion. These are concentrators, but they're actually completers, because they're those students who have completed a non-traditional pathway with the same gender. So these would be females in IT or males in nursing. We've got some yellow cells here to show us where we have a couple or 3 contiguous years where they're yellow, then we need to address it. An interesting thing we showed last week in post-secondary was that the females tend to do better in the participation, but for them, the males did better in completion. That's not the case in secondary. So the females are completing these non-trad pathways a lot more than males are. They wanted us to address special populations in the Perkins 5 meeting we went to in Phoenix. They say that's going to be an important part of Perkins 5, our special populations. Okay, achievement gaps. I mentioned this in the initial slides. These are where an indicator, a particular category or group is not meeting a target compared to its peer group. So these are just some steps, and I pulled this down from the NAEP equity site on how to conduct an equity gap analysis. You first collect the data and create some data visualization tools. You identify which subgroups that show a gap from their comparison group. You identify the potential root causes and conduct root cause action research. You identify those LEAs and programs who don't show gaps to use them as sort of a benchmark. And then you select an intervention aligned with the identified root causes. Let's see if this works. No. You can get these slides after the presentation, and you can, hopefully these hyperlinks will work for you then. Okay, just like the state reports, we break them down by LEA as well. This is a sample district for 1S1, screenshot of that. Pull up the actual file. And you would do analysis the same way you would when looking at the state reports. So again, honing in on the colors, this doesn't have any red in it, so they met on all years, all previous years as well. But you would hone in on these yellow cells, especially where it's contiguous years of not meeting targets, and maybe address those particular groups. We also have them by school, and these files are going to be several pages, sometimes several hundred, depending on the LEA. So they're very similar format. It just shows the LEA and then which school is being looked at. again, look at the colors to help you identify where you need to do some work. Okay, let's go look at some vowels. Actually, let's not. Let's look at our achievement gaps, and then we'll get to the vowels. So I started putting these together a few years ago to let us know these are the statewide results where our achievement gaps are as a state. And you can look, this is the 1S1 measure, language arts achievement. We took a huge fall in 2015 to 16, and that was probably the changeover in assessment methods from what were we using before SAGE? I can't remember now. CRTs before SAGE.
Can you zoom in a little bit so the chart?
Can you guys not see this?
It's a little bit difficult to see. If you can zoom into the chart.
It's not going to get much better.
Oh, that looks good.
Is that okay?
Yeah. That's better, yes.
Okay. We've got a few trend lines here to look at too. So females are doing better than males and have historically. The females in here in the studio are cheering for that. This is the ethnic chart, and so it's very similar to the gender, except for we have the different ethnicities here. You can look at the legend to see which, and these will be provided for you in the OneDrive after the presentation.
Yes, CT Directors File OneDrive folder.
So you look, we jumped a little from 2017 and 16. These are the special populations. So again, you can look at the different colors here in the legend to determine which groups are having some issues, some struggles. The black column is the target. The gray column is the 90% of the target. That's how Octave determines whether or not we've met the target. Never understood why they do it that way, but they do, which is good in some cases. The olive green is the state. 1S2, math achievement, gender. So again, you can see the drop from CRTs to SAGE, and that's why our target dropped as well. We negotiated with Octave to let us lower our target because we had no idea what the results were going to be until we actually dug into the SAGE data. We missed the target last year because it was so high. They bumped us up again because we did so well in 2016. As more of the SAGE results started trickling into the data, we missed it. They let us lower the target again in 2018, and so we passed. These are the ethnic groups again. And then the special populations. S1, CTE skill attainment. This has kind of been on a steady increase since 2010. We typically do well in this category, in this indicator. And again, the females are doing better than the males on the indicator. Here are ethnic groups. A few of them are greater than the target.
Let's stop for just a second. Jerry, where's Jerry? They're saying that they can't hear, they don't have any audio.
Just sunshine.
I hear it just fine. If they don't have audio, perhaps they haven't connected their audio.
No, there's just a couple.
I have like 2 different groups that are
A
saying they have
bunch.
no sound.
Well, so if you,
So,
like, if you scroll down on here,
like Alan's one of them.
so
Let's see.
Alan hasn't connected his audio, it doesn't look like, because I don't see a microphone. Well, there it is.
So if you,
That's Ann Martin. That's-
Yeah, I know.
because they're having a hard time seeing those.
Oh, sorry.
I've already moved them over to OneDrive this morning.
Perfect. And you can tell them that they can open it and look at it. It's at OneDrive.
Okay.
Just don't edit it. Right?
Exactly.
Because if everyone's opening it, it might be slow, but there you go.
Hi, this is Jerry with the State Board of Education again. If you can hear me, please in the chat box indicate that you can hear me. A few people say they can't. I just want to make sure everyone can.
It's like only those 2 groups it's looking like, Jerry, sorry.
So for whatever reason, their audio isn't connected,
Okay.
They,
or they got a volume turned down, or
text them and tell them to call in so they can hear it.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
get
go
their
ahead.
computer.
Let's resume.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and resume.
Okay. 3S1, CT program completion. This has been on a fairly consistent flat line since the beginning of Perkins 4. And that's okay. We've passed it every year. We increased a little bit from 15, 16, and 17 in 2018. Again, the darn females are beating the males in that indicator.
Woohoo!
Problem is, until we go to post-secondary, and then it flip-flops.
And it flip-flops. Here are ethnicities, and you can look and see which of them are struggling a little bit. So this is the achievement gap. Here's the target. Any gap you see between a group and the target is the achievement gap.
On the left, there's the, it's not a mic, it's a
Special
telephone.
populations.
Or listen to
There's
mine.
Utah, disabled. The blue is economically disadvantaged. Orange LEP. Migrant is up there, and I think the reason for that is because the N size is so small. And then non-traditional students.
Man.
Graduation rates. We dipped a little bit in 2013, but we've slowly been climbing back up on this, and we did slightly worse than last year, but not much, and we still met the target. Graduation rates for ethnicity. They still have some achievement gaps in some of the same groups as we do in other indicators. Special populations, kind of the same thing. Placement. Okay. We took a really big dip in 2012 and 13, and we've been climbing back up ever since. I'm not sure exactly the reason for that. Maybe this was the point when the SSNs were decreasing and coming in the data. So I think that's when we started implementing the surveys, which have really been helpful. So thank you guys for your work on that.
Question from Michelle Price.
Yeah.
She says, I have a question on placement. Unless we contact 100% of the students, is that measure accurate? In Alpine, we have a lot of students to contact. So once we hit our target, we stop calling for survival. Obviously, that skews the data because anyone we don't contact counts as not placed. Can't the denominator be the number of students contacted?
No.
No.
Sorry. That's in definition, and it's for this year only. I mean, we're almost done with Perkins 4, so we still have the placement measure in Perkins 5. We'll get to that later in the presentation, but unfortunately, we can't do that.
She says, then we'll continue to survive and skew the data.
Okay. Special populations, we've got some problems in some of the same areas as other indicators, so these are your achievement gaps you want to address. Non-traditional participation. An interesting thing here is that males were doing better than the females in up until 2016.
That means their efforts are working.
Yeah,
For some of them.
yeah. Ethnicity. It looks like most of the ethnic groups have done well on this indicator in 2018. Our target is clear down here. 90% is way down there. And the ethnic groups have done well in non-tribe participation. So you're getting the message out to at least try these classes, even if it's not typical that your gender would take that class. So here's non-traditional participation for special populations. Can anyone tell me why the non-trad is up at 100%?
I was waiting for someone out there.
Yeah, I was waiting for someone out there. Were you
Yeah,
asking us?
that's what I'm asking.
Oh, okay. Good.
Nobody's chatting away.
It should be at 100% because it's non-traditional participants in the non-traditional participation measure. The same is true of non-traditional completion. Here's our gender chart. We had some really big gap in 2012, and it tends to close in these last few years. Females completing a lot higher than males in this measure. Ethnic groups, pretty close except for, what is that, Pacific Islanders, really low for 2018. Here's our special populations, and again, non-trad is at 100% like it should be. In 2010, migrant was at 100%, and that again could be because the N size is very small. You could do the same thing with your data if you want, build these charts. If you don't know how, shoot me an email, I can let you know how.
Jeff,
Yeah.
will you talk a little bit about how we know whether they're a migrant or whether they're, how we know which category to put them in? Because I think there's probably more migrant students than we think about in
Yeah.
Utah that maybe we're not capturing.
Yeah, I think so. And so this data comes through Utrex, which the LEAs upload nightly. And then at year end, after everything is kind of settled down data-wise, I get a couple of file extracts from Utrex, which have these fields indicated yes or no for each of these subgroups. So a migrant would be flagged as a migrant in the data. LEP, same thing. Disabled and economically disadvantaged, the same. Non-traditional, I have to derive here at the state based on the pathways. It's a little tougher for non-track participation because this is course-based. It's only one course to be a participant. And you can't really assign a non-track designation to a single course because they spill over into multiple pathways that they could be in a male non-trad pathway in one case and a female non-trad pathway in another case, or even gender neutral. So they could be in all three buckets potentially. I think that's why this indicator is a little bit higher than the completion. Okay, FALPLs. Those who have been doing this for a while, familiar with this term, it means final agreed on performance levels. And this is where you set your targets. So you'll receive, I upload these to the CTE Finance SharePoint site. Camille told you they're in the FY19 Perkins FALPLs directory. And so we send you the Utah results, and then we send you your LEA results as well. These are color-coded also. You can see the green means that we've met the target for that particular year. L is the target. It means level. I don't know why the feds did it that way, but they did. So if you've not met a target for a couple or three contiguous years, you might consider giving me a call so we can help you negotiate down a target. This is the formula you would use to determine what your new target would be. It's the greater of the most recent actual or most recent 3-year average. And so I've given an example here. This goes out in the email, the FALPL email as well. So if in 2019 the target is 87% and the actual is 74.98%, 76.44 and 71.01. The 3-year average is 74.14. Because that's less than the 74.98, we would take that, multiply it by 1.1 to get a 1% increase. And then our new proposed target would be 75.73. That'll just take me to the SharePoint site.
Yeah. And they do this through email, correct?
Yeah, you just send me an email or give me a call to let me know you want to negotiate down a target, and we'll walk through it. Sometimes I just get emails and they'll tell me I use the 3-year average, here's my new target, and I'll run through the numbers and give you a thumbs up or no, suggest a different target. It's a pretty easy process. Then I'll go in and update the data. It'll appear when I upload the new FALPLs. They'll be in the same directory. They'll just have the updates in them. And I do that once the negotiations are all finished, usually June-ish,
By June 1st.
June 1st, Wendy said. Continuous improvement cycle. This has happened since Perkins 4 began, and it's our goal is to continuously improve year after year in all these indicators. So we have these data quality meetings in January. This is where we look at the performance results. We identify the root causes. We can do that now through March. Select the best solutions in your Perkins plan you do in April and May. When does that due?
June.
June 1st as well?
Well, we don't know this year yet, but typically June 1st.
Okay, so typically June 1st. Jury's still out on when it'll be due this year. The three of us, Wendy, Camille, and I, will be going to DC in a couple weeks, and we'll probably come back with a lot of answers to some of these unknowns for Perkins 5. Step 4, pilot test and evaluate solutions. You do that June through December, and then full implementation is November through June. Data monitoring and review. So Wendy and several others have been doing these membership audits for the last few years. We'll pull some random samples of the data, and they'll meet with you guys to go through your membership. You need to have backup data for that. And Camille is going to tell you about the data review form, where to find it, and what to do on it.
All right, so the data review form is currently located in 2 places right now. The first place is the CTE directors file. I actually just put the pathing in the chat. The second place is in the CTE Finance Group SharePoint folder. Excuse me. And you will actually, when you go into the CTE Finance Group SharePoint folder, you're actually going to want to select the option for forms, and then FY18 data review, and then secondary. The data review is going to be due on February 28th, and you can submit it or upload it to SharePoint, or you are welcome to email it to me if you are still experiencing access issues. If there's any questions on the due date, please get in touch with me directly so that we can discuss it from there. And then also to touch base on Jeff mentioning our transition into Perkins 5, I want everyone to be on the lookout for emails from your associated committees, because we are working out the transition at this point in time. We don't know how this is going to work for the next fiscal year. And as Jeff mentioned, we'll be going to DC and hopefully get answers to those questions. And we will be sharing that as information comes along. Is there anything else, I think? And again, if you are having access issues with either OneDrive or SharePoint, please get in touch with me so that we can make sure we get those resolved.
So that form is due February 28th of this year. And like Camille said, upload it into SharePoint. Any questions, go ahead and send them via chat or talk.
Unmute, yeah.
Unmute.
Yeah, unmute and ask your question.
Can you guys hear me okay if I just add a couple comments? So I know a number of you have been having issues, well, everyone has been having issues with the data quality report that's in the data gateway. We believe we've identified the issue, and we expect to see it fixed maybe this week, but by early next week. I checked today and it is not up yet. Also, just so that you know, I had a meeting with the Aspire group today about the 10-day rule for membership reporting, so that they would have a good understanding. And I know that doesn't address all of you who use another person or another vendor for your SIS system, but they are talking about it, and I know that there's a few different districts that have been working with their provider to maybe come up with some sort of flag that would identify students for the 10-day rule when it comes to monitoring. So just so you are aware, we're working on those things and trying to work with your those that are involved with you in that process.
Perfect.
A couple questions came through chat. Rod Belknap asked, will there be emails to tell us to fill out this form, or should we just go in and do it?
You should just go in and do it. However, I will be sending reminder emails out. If you choose not to receive these reminder emails, please let me know, but I do want to send reminders out as the due date approaches. Again, that is February 28th of 2019.
And one more question from James Taylor. Do we need to fill out the entire form or only those areas where we don't meet our target?
What do you think, Wendy? Can I say all of it? If my preference would be that all of it be filled out in its entirety. However, it is up to Wendy.
So I think as we've gone through this process, we've asked you guys some years to do all of it and some years to do those areas that you have not met. If you have not met a target, you absolutely have to address that target in this process. If you have not met any of your achievement gaps within any of those, I would want you to address it as well. Part of going into Perkins 4 is you need to have a good understanding of your achievement gaps, because you're going to have some requirements around special populations and your achievement gaps, and I think that this will be something that's targeted on our transition plans this year. And so I don't have that detail yet, but I expect to see it. And I think by doing that achievement gap analysis on your data or looking at it closely and writing it into your review will help you with that transition plan for next year. So I would ask you to do it that way. If you have met it all the way across, then don't worry about addressing that one. But if you do have some achievement gaps identified where you did not meet it in Jeff's report, you want to show that back up again, Jeff, on the screen, just one of them with the yellow marks. So if you have any of those that have the subcategories broken out and show that you haven't met them, I would want you to address it in that data review. And then from there we can you'll be able to use that in your transition plan and potentially in your plan for Perkins 4 that will come out shortly thereafter. Or sorry, 5. Yes, thanks, Jeff.
Were there any additional questions or concerns? That's good news.
Yeah.
Perfect. Again, if there's any questions on the FY18 data review form, please get in touch with me. And thank you so very much for being with us today. We really appreciate your time.
We're not done.
Oh, we're not done? We are not
we are
done.
not done.
I am so sorry about that.
We're not done. Don't run away.
Perkins,
Everybody stay logged on.
Perkins 5, like we promised earlier. we're
Jeff, sorry. They have one question on how to address N less than 10.
Send me an email if any of your main indicator totals are N less than 10, and I'll shoot you the numerator and denominator. You can see them overall in the foul poll. There will be their actual percentage, but on the other reports, yeah, for N less than 10, just shoot me an email. Let me know which indicators you're concerned about.
Okay, now you can go.
Okay, so Perkins 5, last week when we met with post-secondary, the bulk of the time was spent on Perkins 5 discussing some of the new things that are headed our way, which was really good. I guess they were sick of Perkins 4. We didn't have any questions, I don't know, that I can remember over there, but we had some good discussions around some of the definitions and the data disaggregation fields for Perkins 5. So CTE participant, this is for secondary and post-secondary, is defined as an individual at either the secondary or post-secondary level who completes at least one CTE course in a CTE program or program of study. A secondary concentrator is defined as a student who completes at least 2 courses in a single program or program of study. This has been giving a lot of the states a little bit of heartburn because they're worried that this will increase their population of concentrators to be almost the same as participants if it's looking at only 2 courses. And we can discuss that in a minute. Completer wasn't defined, and maybe when we go to DC in the next couple of weeks, we'll get some answers around that. Any ideas or questions about the definitions, especially of a concentrator?
Nothing.
Do you, why don't you talk about the different baseline scenarios that we've been running?
Okay, we have a couple of different ideas for running this, and hopefully to get, I mean, it sounds weird, but to get fewer concentrators than we anticipate. One is just looking at 2 courses in a program area, so they could be both electives at that point. The other method that we have discussed was the foundation course and then any elective.
And yeah, any other course?
We're still working out some of the business rules around these and that, and we'll be running some baseline data, and we'll have that ready for you probably at the end of the year so that you can gear up for the actual transition plan next year. Yeah, Andrea?
Michelle's up.
I'm
Did you go?
answering it, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. So there was a question about all students being participants due to digital studies. Actually, all students are participants due to the 1.0 graduation credit for CTE. In addition, there's the digital studies requirement that makes us really concerned that we're going to have every student in Utah be a concentrator, which then sort of defeats the purpose of looking at the data surrounding CTE students, because really we would have to be looking at all students in Utah potentially, and that's why we're coming up with these different baseline scenarios so that we can see what those numbers look like and then how that will impact our numbers in Utah and what we really need to do in designing our pathways moving forward. Okay, you're good.
Good. Just to remind you, these are the Perkins 4 definitions, and we tried, Talia argued in favor of keeping it as what we have it, in that 1.5 credits would be 3 courses, and 3 is greater than 2. And so, but they didn't like that. They want to leave it at 2 courses because they want it to be a standard among all states. Again, when we go to DC, maybe we'll get some clarification on this, or on how we can define a course so that it makes more sense, and that the numbers wouldn't be diluted, not diluted. Okay, these are the new indicators, and they're quite a bit different than last year. I mean, a lot of them are the same, but the numbering is different. So 1S1 this time would be a 4-year grad rate rather than language arts achievement. We can choose between 4-year grad rate and then the extended grad rate, and I believe we're going to stay with the 4-year. 2S1 is academic proficiency in reading language arts, so we're used to that. 2S2 is the academic proficiency in mathematics, we're used to that. The new one here is 2S3 academic proficiency in science. So that's a new indicator. I should say secondary placement, not post-secondary. That's 3S1. We're used to that one. And then 4S1 says non-traditional program enrollment, but it's actually concentration. So it's split the difference between 6S1 and 6S2. Rather than participants and completers, we're looking at concentrators. We have to choose between these next three, one of the next three for the program quality indicator. So attained a recognized post-secondary credential, attained post-secondary credits, or participated in work-based learning. And then 5S4 is another program quality that we have to have in addition to one of the previous three. We're probably going to use skill attainment for that and use our CTE skills tests. You can find those indicators on the cte.ed.gov site. You go to accountability and then core-indicators. It'll pull these up. I believe it also has some definitions linked to them.
Does anyone have can you go back, Jeff?
Oops.
Nope, sorry.
That's good. Sorry.
Nope. Yep.
There you go.
There we go. Does anyone have, we've been talking about data today and just wondering if any of you guys have any feelings about the program quality indicator and which of those options seem the most appealing to the group. No comment, huh?
Yeah, it takes it a minute to come through, but,
Is it a delayed audio?
Okay, I think you can go on.
No preferences.
It doesn't look like it. Oh,
they're starting to type.
there we go. So Daryl says work-based learning is much easier to gather data on. And somebody else agreed. Some say, Janet Goebel says concurrent enrollment.
If you do post-secondary credits, you can.
Post-secondary credits would be concurrent enrollment. Jordan District says work-based learning.
You have to pick one.
So I believe, and I don't have this all figured out, but I do believe that we will be able to pick one of them as our as a 5S1 program quality indicator, and then we could potentially use another one of them as our other. We wouldn't necessarily have to come up with something completely new. We could pick two of them and potentially use one of them as our other.
If you want, would you just shoot me an email?
Well, we've got their chat.
Results, but
Yeah.
if you didn't type anything in the chat, would you just send me an email letting me know your preference? We'll compile that and see which.
We'll take it into consideration as we're moving forward. Okay.
Okay. Perkins 5, data disaggregation. These are the fields in which the reports are broken down, and some of them are still there from Perkins 4 and even before that, Perkins 3. Gender, ethnicity, disabled, economically disadvantaged, LEP, single parent, that's only for post-secondary, and migrant, and then non-trad. And then we have 4 new ones, and I'm thinking If Lynn Sorensen is there, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking at least these first three new ones are coming through Utrex already, so we just have to gather those up at the year end. The first one is youth in or aged out of foster care.
So Lynn says yes, the first three are in tracks.
Okay. The next is child of active military parents, and then homeless, and the final is out of work individuals. And Wendy thinks that's referring to parents, parents of the students if they're out of work. It was decided in the post-secondary meeting that they were unable to collect any of the new ones or migrant. They haven't been collecting migrant before this, and for good reason. They had a pretty good explanation of why they don't collect these or why they can't collect the new ones. So we'll look into the out-of-work individuals, see how feasible it is to collect those data. If we are, then they'll be included in the new reports. Any questions or comments about these categories?
So there's a question that says, are the post-secondary indicators just for the high school years, or will they be required to gather data after graduation?
Post-secondary indicators. No.
There's a question.
On previous.
No, I think it's on this disaggregated data.
Well, she said on these post-secondary right here. These two, 5S1, 5S2, is that what your question's referring to?
Yes, he says.
Yes.
Yeah, it's whether they attained it at the secondary level.
Okay.
Okay, we have the same continuous improvement cycle as we did in Perkins 4, only in Perkins 5 it's going to be a 2-year cycle. So Wendy and I were talking a couple weeks ago, and we said it'd probably look more like a slinky or something, or a figure 8 if we're doing a 2-year cycle. But the steps are going to be similar or the same. You look at your data, you identify some problems, try to find some solutions to them. You test and evaluate those solutions, and if they work, then you implement them. That went quicker than our post-secondary.
Just ask a quick question.
Okay. I was going to say, did we address Lynn's question of collecting the last item for data?
What was it?
Is it how would we collect the last item? And I'm assuming that was the out of work.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about that.
Yeah, I really don't know at this point.
You'll have to clarify the question, Jeff.
Sorry, Lynn Sorensen and Duchesne is asking how would we collect the last field, the out-of-work individuals. And I'm not really sure at this point. Again, if we go to DC and they tell us, and we'll come back and give you that information. I don't know if you would do this upon registration or how you would know. I don't know.
Well, was there an updated definition for what they considered out of work?
So there is going to be some discussion about what all of these mean, because they just sort of list the category in the language, and then we have to then go back in and have them clarify for us what that really means. And so when we go in a couple weeks, the idea is that as all of the states are together, that we'll be able to sit down with all of the Jeffs of the world, right, of all of our other states, partners, and we'll be able to try and come up with something that really is consistent across the states, but also is something that we might be able to track or at least collect some information on. that's similar to what others are doing. The reality is we may not be able to collect it. And if we can't collect it, we just will say that we can't collect it. We'll collect the ones that we can, and if we can't, then we'll just have to write that into our state plan that we cannot collect that particular disaggregated data point.
Let's scan through and see if we missed anybody else's questions. Did we get Daryl's question, post-secondary indicators for just the high school? Perfect.
Also, as you guys know that how much you love placement, it's pretty obvious. It's on Michelle's list of favorite things to do. I think it is going to be helpful if you guys can come up with a better way to do placement. We're not opposed to doing that. We just didn't have a better solution at the time, and we had to. So if you guys, if anybody has ideas on better ways to do placement, we can try and do that, because right now we don't have the ability to collect socials and or do matches on socials for students. So yeah, if anybody has any great ideas, please share them. I don't think we have any other questions from anybody? I think we're done.
Am I okay to say it this time?
Yeah.
Okay. We are officially done with this meeting now. Thank you so very much for joining us this morning. And as previously mentioned, we appreciate your time. If there are any questions, please feel free to either call or email Wendy, Jeff, or myself. Thank you and have a good day.